Ever heard that saying, timing is everything? Well, what if that applies to Bitcoin too? Like, what if there are actually Bitcoin seasons, times of the year when it just makes sense to buy or sell?
Interesting.
That's what we're diving into today, this whole idea of Bitcoin seasonality.
Okay.
We found this article, and it's got some pretty wild ideas about how certain times of year might be better for Bitcoin than others, kind of like how pumpkin spice lattes have their moment, you know?
Right, right.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk about what seasonality actually means when it comes to finance. We're not talking about actual seasons here. It's more about looking for patterns,
Yeah.
like do certain assets tend to do better or worse at certain times of the year?
Yeah, makes sense.
Like think about ice cream. Ice cream sales go through the roof in summer, obviously, right?
Of course, everyone wants ice cream when it's hot.
Exactly. So the question is, does Bitcoin have those kinds of seasonal swings too?
And that's what we're looking into.
And you know what? This article doesn't waste any time. It jumps right into it with September, which historically, let's just say, hasn't been Bitcoin's best month. And, well, it looks like early October hasn't been much better.
Yeah, I can see why people might be a little on edge seeing those prices dip, especially around this time of year.
It's got to have some people sweating a little,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. It's natural to react that way. But remember, past performance isn't a crystal ball.
Right, right.
It doesn't guarantee what's going to happen next. But having said that, this whole September thing is something a lot of traders watch really closely.
They do.
Oh, yeah. There's no single explanation for why September can be shaky for Bitcoin. But there are some pretty interesting theories out there. Like some people think it might be tied to people getting their finances in order as the end of the year approaches.
Interesting. So like a mad dash for cash before the holidays.
Maybe. Or maybe it's people selling off some assets to balance out any gains they might have made throughout the year. Or, it could just be good old-fashioned market psychology at play.
Okay, so we've got the September slump. But this article doesn't just leave us hanging with a bunch of doom and gloom, does it?
Not at all. There are some glimmers of hope.
Because, according to the article, the second half of October is when things could start looking up, right?
Right.
And then it throws in this whole other thing, and this is where I really started to geek out a little bit, the MACD crossover.
Ah, yes. Getting a little technical now.
So for those of us who don't speak fluent chart, what's the MACD crossover all about?
Okay, so imagine you've got a chart with two lines on it, right?
Okay, got it.
One of those lines is tracking short-term price trends, what's happening day to day. The other line is looking at the long-term trend, like over weeks or even months. Now, when that short-term line crosses above the long-term line, it could mean something big is about to happen, a surge in buying momentum.
So it's like a signal flare, like, hey, pay attention, something's up.
You could say that, yeah. But, and this is important, it's not a foolproof crystal ball. It's more like one clue, one piece of the puzzle.
I see.
For example, back in July of 2021, the MACD crossover flashed a buy signal right before Bitcoin went on this tear. It almost doubled in price by November that year.
Wow. Okay, so definitely something to keep an eye on.
Definitely. Now, alongside all this, the article also talks about another thing traders watch, support levels.
Support levels.
Yeah. Think of them like floors holding up the price. If the price is above a certain level, it's like it's got support.
Okay, I like that. The price floor makes sense.
And the article points out these lows that Bitcoin hit back in September.
Right.
So right now, as long as Bitcoin stays above that floor, so to speak, it could be a good sign. It means there's still buying pressure. People still believe in it. But if it breaks below that September low, that could trigger a wave of selling.
So staying above that September low is kind of a make or break point.
It's more like it's a cautiously optimistic sign.
Okay, cautious optimism. Got it. There's this one more thing I wanted to hit on from the article, something that really got me thinking. They mentioned this whole Halloween effect thing that happens in the stock market, and they suggested it might actually have some influence over Bitcoin's performance too. Is there anything to that?
That's a fascinating connection.
Yeah.
See, sometimes Bitcoin seems to move in sync with the stock market. Other times it does its own thing. This Halloween effect is this weird pattern where the stock market tends to do really well between late October and December. Some people think it might be tied to investor sentiment, how people are feeling about the market as a whole.
Okay.
Whether that spooky season magic rubs off on Bitcoin this year, though, well, Who knows?
Right. That's the million-dollar question. So even though this deep dive has been all about Bitcoin, about these patterns and indicators, it really highlights how nothing exists in isolation. It's
Exactly.
all part of a bigger, interconnected financial system.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. So to wrap things up, we've looked at historical trends, that MACD crossover, support levels, all these factors that might point to a cautiously optimistic outlook for Bitcoin, especially as we move deeper into October.
Right.
But it's crucial to remember that nobody, and I mean nobody, can predict the future with absolute certainty.
And that's kind of the exciting part, right? We've given you the historical context, the technical signals, all the clues. Now the question is, what do you make of it all? If Bitcoin does follow its usual seasonal patterns this year, what would that mean for you, for your own investments? What opportunities or challenges would it create, and how would you navigate them?
What would you do? Something to think about.
Definitely. Something to think about.